Let's talk about midlife stagnation. What I mean by midlife stagnation is we have something called a Saturn return, which usually happens at age 27, 28. And essentially, I'm not going to go into the astrology of it, but shit hits the fan. Like, you have some sort of crisis, you lose your job, your relationship ends, and it's just like, oh my God, it just feels very destabilizing. For me, it was literally right on cue, lost my job, was working at the National Theatre of Great Britain, like one of the top theatres in the world. And my whole background, my degree was in theatre, and then I went into the therapy stuff later. I did my master's, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I had reached the pinnacle, and I think I self-sabotaged myself out of that job. I was just about showing up. I mean, I was showing up, but lights were on, nobody was home. I was definitely performing of a version of myself that I didn't recognise, and then partying on the weekend, like, woohoo, I get to be me. And it was just, I mean, at the time it was great fun, but looking back now, it was like, girl. And I say all that to say, I believe because of that midlife crisis that I took heed. Well, I had no choice. I was so discontent, and it was hard because everyone was like, oh my God, you're there, wow. I sabotaged my way out of that job, and there began my entrepreneur journey, building my own thing. And it took a while, and it wasn't easy, but I'm glad I did it before my children came along. I did it before I had major responsibilities. So I'm grateful for the crisis that forced me to figure it out, to force me to stop living the life that didn't feel aligned. And I didn't know it at the time that that's what was going on. I don't even think I had the language of self-sabotage. I just knew that I wasn't performing as like I know I could, because I realised people couldn't see or appreciate me for me. And I'm partly to blame for that because I wasn't showing up as me. Anyway, midlife stagnation. A lot of people, everyone has their Saturn return, but not sometimes when things are crashing down around you, you can cling to whatever it is you're clinging to, even if that thing is painful, awful, the relationship is dead on its knees, the job is undermining you, not paying you enough, and your claws are in, the universe is saying, this ain't for you, and you're like, and then we get, 5-10 years later down the line, 40 years old, 35 years old, 45 years old, 50 years old, and you're like, everything has just plateaued, and you're just like, I'm stagnant. There's nowhere else for me to be promoted to. I don't like it here, but I know it here, so I'm gonna stay here. And that's kind of the stagnation. Like when the signals are like, meh, 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 change something. And because a lot of the time, as we're growing up, we figure out that in order to cope, we don't listen to that little voice that says, this ain't right. You hush up and shut up, because that was unsafe to call out things that you didn't like, or to listen to your body when it said, I don't like this. So over the years, you just learn to tune out. And that's why I say, no, Black women do not have a higher threshold of pain. No, we do not have a higher threshold to tolerate disrespect. What we do have is coping mechanisms that helped us survive certain parts of our life. And what that evolves into are adults that don't have a higher pain threshold, but they have a higher ability to tolerate nonsense because they've trained themselves to do so. They've trained themselves to tolerate poor treatment, because when you're, for example, 8 years old, if someone tells you to shut up and eat your food, even though you don't like it and it's making you vomit, maybe you're dairy intolerant and your mum is making you eat cereal every morning and you're literally vomiting up. It's like, you eat it. You're not getting anything else. After a while, it's like, I can't trust my body in this way. That's a personal experience. I never knew dairy intolerance was a thing, because my mum was just like, cereal is what we have for breakfast. I used to go to work and I was like, everyone has a tummy ache at 11 a.m, right? Right? That's part of life, right? The 11 a.m. tummy ache? Yeah? No? The 11 a.m. Oh, oh, that's not just like a thing. No, it's not. You're dairy intolerant. Like, I just figured out how to just cope with that because my mum wasn't having it. And then when you think about that in terms of like certain people, you speak to them in the wrong tone, they're like, or you've said and done enough. I will not be around you because you've shown yourself not to be safe. And it happens so subtly that you don't even know that person has backed away and moved away but they're just like, ooh, I'm sensitive and I'm protecting my safety. Whereas some of us were brought up in such chaos that someone can show certain undesirable character traits and you're just like, oh, meh, seen this before, feels like home. And you don't move away from it. In fact, that just feels familiar. Oh, you told me to shut up to my face? Okay. That wasn't very nice. But anyway, what are you doing later? Like, that person showed you their ass. Why are we still allowing them in our vicinity? Like, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. But sometimes that does not ring any alarm bells because we've normalised that. So, in the context of midlife stagnation, because numbing out, when we're talking about it in terms of our nervous system, there's a state where, we had fight, flight, freeze. There's a state called dorsal vagal where your activation goes up and you're in fight or flight and you're jumpy, hypervigilant. And then some people are in such a constant state of stress that on the face of it, someone that is a bit like slow, moves slowly, maybe their eyes are slightly droopy and they're like a bit, on the face of it you might think that person's really lazy, can't be bothered, whatever. But actually what's going on is their nervous system is in such a high state of arousal that in order to cope, they've now numbed out, they've tuned out, they've kind of gone into a kind of like, I'm here but I'm not here. Because if they numb out to feeling in general, they're more likely to be able to survive certain environments. And some people can function here, but they're not feeling the joys of life. They're also not feeling the like deep lows. They're just kind of coasting, And that leads to a kind of stagnation because you're not paying attention to your internal GPS. It's not that you're not paying attention to it. You've numbed out. You can't feel that feeling of, ooh, this doesn't feel right. Or, ooh, oh my God, I'm really interested in that. Let me go do more of that. I really like moving my body in this way. Let me go do more of that. You don't seek out joy and seek out pleasure. You're just kind of like, I just want to coast. And that's when we get to this stage of, is this my life? Oh. Coping mechanisms. Beware. They're all well and good because they serve their purpose. But then maybe 10, 20 years later, you're not in the same chaos that brought about this coping mechanism to numb out, but you're still operating with that same system. Yeah? And that's why in my line of work, it's about inviting people back into their bodies, inviting people back into feeling, inviting people back into trusting their inner guidance, trusting their instinct. And it's a process. It's a process that takes a while because if you've tuned out of that and you've lost trust in your own ability to make decisions in your own best interest and to the point where some people, and I know there'll be some of my girlies who are like, she's talking to me here. Some of us have tuned out to the point of, I didn't even realise I needed to go to the toilet. I mean, I did, but I just didn't go. I was sat here desperate for the loo, but I just didn't go. Yeah, we've tuned out of like, we'd only go when it's like, okay, I'm about to wet myself now. I must run to the loo. And when they're desperate until the body's like, yo, we need to go to the loo. Before that, they're like, la, 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 doing work. Because you're out of sync. You've tuned out of your natural, because you're out of sync with your body's natural rhythm, with the information that is given back to you. So in order to avoid the stagnation, we need to be dropping back into our bodies. And if you're already at a plateau in life, feeling a bit meh, then it's time to start tuning back in, girl. It's time to start trusting the little, even start small. When you need to go loo, go to the loo. That's a start. That is a start. Those who know. And comment. Let me know if this is any of you. Sorry if I'm dragging any of you by the edges, but it's real. I see it day in, day out. So it might seem far-fetched to some, but yeah, it's real.